Good morning, my friends, or afternoon, depending on where you are, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie Podcast. I, as always, am your co host, Brian, and joining me, as always, is your co host, Jim. Jim.
I think he fell asleep.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Oh, no.
Oh.
No, it's working. I don't know. what that deal was. Anyway, push to talk key, not working.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
Thank God. I was like, oh, no, not now. Good morning, everyone. We're doing an early morning, for me at least, podcast because our guest is in Paris, France, joining us, the creative director and co-founder of Amplitude Studios, Romain de Weber. Good morning, or afternoon, Romain.
Good morning, guys.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are very excited to talk about your new upcoming game. I'm actually excited to talk about all your games because I'll be honest, I love them all, so I want to get to that. But we're here primarily to talk about Endless Space 2, which just hit Steam Early Access about a week and a half ago, roughly, as we were recording this. About 2 weeks.
Yes, that's us. Yeah, 10 days ago.
Yeah, so about a little less than 2 weeks.
Lifetime actually, but it's only 10 days.
Now we're talking about Endless Space 2, but I want to talk about the first game for a minute, because I think it's kind of fascinating that one came out in 2012, if I remember correctly, and it's interesting because before that there were barely any Space 4X games coming out, and yet 2012 kind of was the year this whole space game resurgence really started kickstarting, if you will. But yeah, you guys hit in 2012, and before that, I mean, the biggest 4X before that was Soar of the Stars, and Soar of the Stars 2 was around then, but it was a kind of a disaster. So, what, I guess, how did this journey start? Like, what prompted you guys to start making a Space 4X when the genre was kind of abandoned when you must have started this?
Well, that's actually one of the reasons why we decided to do it. At the time, so basically we were working at Ubisoft with Mathieu a few years before that, and actually we were big fans of 4X, and we realized by in working in big studios, and any of them could have been Ubisoft or any other ones. Big publishers, none would be interested in the games we love to play, basically. So we would have to do other games. And at one point, we realized actually that everything was more or less aligned to more or less live and do the games we wanted to. And the main reasons for that were because for the first time in the history, basically, we could have access to a very powerful technology that was not free, but nearly free. And that's Unity. It was so cheap compared to what existed before, and so powerful, easy to use. Then Steam, obviously, and we've been working with Steam and Valve for quite a bit. I think I worked with Arcane Studios, and Dark Messiah was, I think, one of the first game using Steamworks before it was even called Steamworks. So we were really used to work with them and seeing from very close how powerful it was and how amazing and easier it was to basically buy games there. So we realized actually, thanks to Steam, thanks to actually the way they retribute the developers, because if you work with Steam, it's 70% of the price that goes back to the developer, right? And normally it would have been at best 10 or 15%. So suddenly you can make games, just for a few people, just for 30,000 people, it's enough, to have a game and just survive and make the next game. So that's what I would say to do, because now we had the technology, we had the distribution means, and basically what we did was we borrowed money from all our friends, so we had 45 friends or something that's just pitched in and gave us some money, and with that we created Amplitude to make 4X. But then, was which 4X to do first, and space being, mostly empty, was a good choice when you have no money to start. Basically, you have to work on planets and ships, and then it's just game design. So that's why we said to work on Endless Space first, and hoping that we would bring a lot of things that we learned to do working on AAA's games, and yet, work in a genre which is, not very frequently associated to AAA. So, and does not always mean, adding more money. It's mostly like paying extra care to some elements like interface, like accessibility, music, art, and it's not always a matter of money. It can be sometimes and often, but not always. So on everything we could, we try to focus on that, and it's true at the time. I mean, the last time we played a 4X we loved was maybe 10 years before that. For me, it was Galactic Civilization 2. I loved that game to death. But it's been a long time to wait for the next Space 4X to. So that's why we wanted to do our own.
Which game did you mention? I'm sorry, I didn't
Galactic Civilization 2.
Oh yes, of course. Yes, of course. Good game. Have you played the third one?
I played it a bit. I think so much of the 2 that I really had trouble going back to it. So I'm waiting to have more time to try to go back to it as soon as I can.
That's totally fair. It's pretty good. It keeps a lot of what made 2 good while adding new stuff. So you guys worked at Ubisoft a bunch of you, it sounds like, before this?
Yes, most of the team was at Ubisoft. So was Mathieu and I, so the co-founders. But our close team, quickly joined us after us, and was our lead writer Jeff. Was actually he worked all along, in all our games actually at Ubisoft. With Mathieu, we're sharing a team where we're both producers, but he was more on the organization side. I was more on the creative side. And basically, and then, a lot of people working with us over there that just said to come and join us when we created Amplitude. Well, Ubisoft, and before for me was DICE before that.
Oh, wow. So you guys have a...
Yeah, what did you work on at DICE?
I did work on the first Battlefield. I was the lead designer of the first Battlefield. So I can't say Battlefield 1 anymore now, since today. But the first...
So it's 1942?
1942, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's... A lot of people still consider that one of the best ones.
I
put many hours into that, especially when they put the Star Wars mod out. Then I lost a whole month of my life.
I couldn't believe what that guy was able to do with scripts. It was amazing, because a lot of the stuff that we swore was not possible to do, and he did it. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's always impresses me when somebody takes a game that was just not meant to do some things, and through not even tampering with the executable, just in the scripting files, is able to pull something like that off. That's just amazing to me.
Yeah, it's because he just tried. For us, we didn't even try. We just thought, someone said it was not possible, and nobody tried. So that was amazing.
Yeah. So what the thing that immediately struck me about Endless Space 1 was the art and the music that were in there. Were just really first rate. Which, coming from, like Galactic Civilization 2 was okay looking. It was definitely better looking than like Master of Orion 2 and 3. But then this was a completely different world of level of quality of art and that. So it seemed like, you paid particular attention to the aesthetics of the game, which was really, really nice. I used to just listen to the soundtrack on loop when I was playing other things. But so whenever you guys made the first game, then you learned some things from that, and then you made Endless Legend, which is the fantasy version of this. And then I also own Dungeon of the Endless, which is a radical departure from from the other types of games. Although it's really neat, Yeah, well, it strikes me as something like maybe somebody started on their spare time and you guys saw it and said, "Ooh, let's make that." And
it's not in drunk evening.
Really?
As so many things do.
where a bunch of people being, getting drunk one evening, so talking about, all these roguelikes we're playing. And basically we just started like designing the bare bone of what would become that game, just for fun. And actually what's weird is like all the weekend after that party, basically everyone started to work on their own, basically on prototyping, game design documents, just like Monday, like 2 days after, like 3 days after, like we were all like meeting up and saying, okay, yeah, guys, I did this and I did that. And it actually became something serious very quickly. And maybe not even a week, actually, we started production on the game, which was, I never had that happening ever. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. It's a definitely different kind of game. I don't think anybody'd ever made it's like a roguelike tower defense game with like resource management and things. And so that was something I don't think we've seen before or since.
It actually made me like tower defense. I'm not a big tower defense fan, but I love the tower defense, how seamless it is in Dungeon.
With a bit of RPG as well, it's quite fun basically to really get attached to all these guys and discovering all these stories between them. It's definitely a cool thing to design.
Now we mentioned,
and it's sort of another parallel with the Sword of the Stars guys, right? Where because they also made a roguelike in a gap in between games, right? And I really like that. What is that even called? I can't remember the name of it.
Sword of the Stars, The Pit.
The Pit, yeah.
Which is another excellent roguelike. Now, one thing I found fascinating about all your games is that they share the same interconnected universe. Was that an early decision, like even before Endless Space? Or was that a decision that came about after you saw the success of the first game?
No. It was basically when we started Amplitude. So we knew we would work on 4 axes, but actually we were not limited to space from the beginning. Actually, we wanted to work on many different 4 axes. But the thing is, we knew that space would be a good entry point because we had everything to learn. So we did put a few stones that would help us for the future. And actually, the universe was meant to go beyond endless space. Now, the thing is, when we started to work on Legend, it's true that, we were not sure at the beginning whether it would be actually adapted. And at the same time, we're so crazy about the universe we created, and we really loved it, and we really wanted to find Link. And at the same time, developing a sci-fi universe is very difficult because you have so many cliches you can fall in, but it's even worse with fantasy. Even more cliches. What is an elf? What is a dwarf? Can you make one with elves and dwarves? Can you make one with giants? With goblins? So it's always the kind of questions what people expect to see in a medieval fantasy universe. Dragons, do you have dragons, magic, what happens, and suddenly when we realized actually it would be perfect to put that world within the endless universe and just be a part of it, made it actually very interesting. Suddenly it was okay, it's not just pure medieval fantasy, it's a medieval fantasy set in the sci-fi universe. And actually what was even cooler was when we started to look at different people and realizing that we could have some people in that planet being aware that actually they're more or less sci-fi people like lost in that medieval universe and they had to get out of there, like the Vultures, for example, and having other people having different aspects of magic, of fantasy, like magic, not everyone would see the world or the universe in the same way or would have the same information about the universe. As a player, when you start to play a bit all different factions, you start to understand what's going on and what are all the pieces of the puzzle. But it's kind of a reward for playing the game for quite a bit.
Yeah, I can tell there's a lot of little nods in there to other games and things that diehards will definitely appreciate. Now, does that mean you have kind of a universe Bible that helps you keep track of everything? Helps you keep track of continuity in the universe,
yes.
So you don't kind of step over yourself?
Yes, we have. So we have first we have a living Bible, which is Jeff, the lead writer. So when you're not sure, you just ask him. And then of course we have quite a few documents explaining, the whole like story, who, where, when, all these kind of elements. So when we add something, we first update that, we see where it stands, and every once in a while, Jeff comes back to all of Amplitude and explains, the status of the universe, at that point, So when we start the game or in mid development. Because we always evolve the universe to include all the needs that we have, all the cool ideas that we had in between, the stories we wrote, and it can update and modify some of the elements that people thought. So we have regular updates on how the universe is evolving.
So explain to me just briefly how Endless Legend and Endless Space, where is Endless Legend in the Endless Space galaxy, and at what time period?
Okay, so basically the way it is. So first of all, like Jeff would be the best one to answer that question. So I'll do my best, basically to give you a few hints. But basically, the way it is you had a long time ago a civil war within the Endless universe, or the Endless actual empire. So the Endless were these extremely advanced guys that are the base of our world, and some of them basically when they discovered the dust being that amazing matter that can shape in anything they think of, they started using it. Some people kind of refused that and became virtual, and this basically these people and refuse their body and basically virtual guys, and basically there's been a fight between physical guys and virtual guys, and and kind of the whole empire and universe got half destroyed through that, and hence also a lot of also dust all over the place. And during that civil war, Auriga, the planet of Endless Legend, was heavily destroyed because it was a research planet for the Endless, and that's why also the planet got really hurt, and the planet is basically starting in a cycle of death, basically. And as you play the game, as the game goes forward, you see this planet dying. But the planet, as you will see, is very special, very different, more or less, maybe nearly has a soul. And basically, you will be one of these people that are, that will resurface a long time after that war. And some of these people, like the Volters, actually, that were spacefaring people, humans, actually, already that appeared, after the disappearance of the Endless, got shut down by the automatic defenses, for example, from Auriga, basically, and crashed on the planets. And basically, we have humans arriving there, and some other people that went into hiding during the war suddenly surface again and realize the planet is good to live again, basically. And so that's where you stand. You come a long time after. We never said how long, after the war and the end of the war, the event starts, but we always say it's a very long time after the end of the war. So enough for the planet to kind of recover from its wounds, or from what's appearing to be wounds, but actually the planet, as you know, is dying. So that's it. And when you finish Endless Legend, you will be able to escape the planet. And in our storyline, we have some of the guys that actually, like the Volters, actually, that can finally escape, and recreate, their own faction and be at the start of what will become the Dividend Empire later.
Oh, that's cool.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff as far as the lore of the races, from the first Endless Legend, I'm not sure who all is going to be in Endless Legend, Endless Space too. But it's, some of the robotic races, like the Cravers and the Formers and those guys that they have their own motivations for doing things, and they're not necessarily that they're going to diplomatically participate with the other races. Might just be to eat them. But yeah, I thought that was very rich lore and backstory that was in there, and it kind of colored the way that I played the races. It encouraged me to kind of role play in in their attitude.
We definitely want to have like good synergy between the story and the gameplay. So the gameplay should actually help you roleplay. It should help you, for example, like cravers. You have that sense of craving, very quickly. You realize, you're emptying all plants you're on. You need to move on. You need to get new plants because that's part of the gameplay. But that's part of who they are, and there's a very good sense, of unity between this story and gameplay, and that's what we want to push for all our populations.
Okay, I guess and Brian might have this in his list of questions, but it's just the primary thing that I think of when I think of Endless Space is you guys did some very brave things in the combat system. As far as having some cards that are in there that you can play, where you have to kind of gamble before the combat starts about what your tactics are going to be, and then of course you gain different tactics as the game goes on. So you might not even have options at the beginning that you will have later. But as the three phases of combat, so you have the long range, medium, and then the short range brawling between the ships. And that was the thing that I actually enjoyed a lot. There seemed to be some contention in the fan base about whether they liked that combat or not. And first off, I'm curious about the development of that combat system and what you guys did to arrive at that. And then in the new game, how it has been changed based on just refinement and what you learned in Endless Legend, which I think combat in Endless Legends is amazing, and how that influenced the design stuff in here. Because I had a problem in just conceptually understanding, what do you want from me as a ship designer, and I think it would have helped to show me like some example ships as a new player, like these are the things that we built. Right. Because I try to look at the computer when I'm playing against it, and it's like, what is he making? Right. Like, how could I do that better? Because you can put, a ton of guns on a ship, or, different systems and stuff. But I didn't understand, like, do I make one ship that's just pure medium range, or do I try to make a balanced ship that can fight in all three phases, or what? I've never quite understood what's optimal.
Okay. So the thing is, I think we're all, even ourselves, looking at what's optimal, and it's a system which is still evolving. What we want for you is to be able to, of course, make bets between, should you have, a fleet which is mostly made for long range, or having some long range ships, that will be defended by short range ships, you will put in different, flotillas that will be able to more or less, attract, the fires well, and try to go deep in the melee. We definitely wanted to give you a sense of combining basically your ships together. I don't think you can make ships that are good all around if you want, or maybe just specialize. And that's definitely what we want you to do. We want you to specialize and find the proper mix of ship to have the best combined fleets together. What we'll develop more is also like the idea of capital ships and support ships. So at one point, as the game evolves, your flotillas or your fleets that will should evolve from this kind of small skirmishes fleets that where maybe at the beginning you tend to have all around ships. But as it goes, you will more or less create your kind of task force, and create everything around, these big ships that will send, fighters and bombers to go deep, within the enemy lines very fast. And it will be all about protecting your big ships that will have this amazing firepower. So it's from the beginning to the end, it's not the same gameplay, not the same designs, and then therefore will not be always in strategies. Then talking about strategies, you can try to counter, some other people's strategies, and the idea will be how can we understand the strategies they should play. So I try to find the best counter for that, and then you want to enter into that mind game where you actually should try to say, okay, now if he thinks I'm going to counter with this, maybe he will play my counter. So so where do I stop? What I think is best? Should I play just what's best for me? Counter what's best for him? So that's what we want, and then by bringing data and information to the player, so they could try to learn on how the other player is playing. So to see what are their habits, and maybe by trying to counter their habits. So that's more or less the whole spirit, if it makes any sense.
Yeah. So if I encounter another player's ships, do I get intelligence about their ship? Like, these were the components that were on that ship that I just fought? Or do I have to just kind of observe?
You don't have that today. I don't think so, but you will eventually have that. We want you to better understand the ship designs that you're facing. That's important. What's very important is also when you look at the battle in front of you, you should also better understand the ships that you have. Understand the modules equipped, where they're successful, where they're not, where they miss, when they miss, what they're aiming at. So all this scanning that we add during the battle is stuff that will help you a lot. Try to see what were your efficient ship designs and which ones were not. So it could be a spectacle that you can just watch and not try to think, or it could be just something that you want to study. It's like replaying a match that you've seen on TV, and basically you want to replay it again to try to understand, like being the coach basically, where you guys did right and what they did wrong. And we want to give the players all the tools to really basically feel like the coach of the team or of their fleet. And basically try to optimize from battle to battle, their behaviors, and of course counter the behaviors of the enemy as they learn more and more from them, whether this is from their designs or from their strategies that they're using.
Okay, would it be possible, or do you think it would be too much power for the player to have if there was a simulator where I could just build some ships, pick a race's ship and pick technology and just stick modules on it and then make them fight each other and see what happens, without having to actually build them? Just as long as I have the technology, or I have observed the technology from the enemy, and maybe I could try to reproduce their ships and test a fleet against them.
It could be possible. It's not in the plan right now. We talked about it actually a while back. We'd say not to do it because we realized there's so many factors that should be taken into account. It's probably like like an arena to try ships will not all ship designs are good. You don't have bad ones. It depends how you're going to use them, with what other ships you're going to use them against, what you're going to use them, and that's it's part of that. Actually, from game to game, it will not be the same. People will adapt different strategies, will create different designs. So it's a matter of adapting to that game you're playing and against who you are warring, with whom you are allied. So it will. It's all normally you wouldn't need that, but you would need to understand what's happening during the battle. And right now we need more than that, more than what we have today in the game.
Yeah. So what do you think about just a log that I could review after combat?
We discussed that. It is somewhere in our lists. It's pretty low for now. But some of the stuff we have in mind, and also depends on player feedback. But we have logs, and be able to more or less review step by step what happened during the battle. Basically, kind of a visualization of the log after in after battle, to try to understand when you did a lot of damage, when you received a lot of damage, what happened then. So it's stuff that could be done. It's quite a lot of work, and right now, as it is so very advanced for a very small portion of the player, we definitely want to try to make something more accessible. And it's possible that one day, probably maybe post-release, that for the most advanced players, we could leave some logs and have people analyze more in detail what worked, what didn't work.
Okay. Yeah, because currently I'm just sort of at an experimental phase where it's just like, well, let me just make a ship, I'll throw this stuff on it and see what happens. But I don't really understand the modifiers of, if I have a bunch of one kind of a gun, do I get a bonus or, So it's a little fuzzy, but there's people that actually have grasped the system really well and written guides, and it's just been a long time since I read one.
Yeah, and anyway, we'll add more and more information for everyone, so it will become easier to grasp.
We do.
Okay, so what is actually
well?
What have you guys changed from the combat in the first one to the second one? Is it major differences?
The biggest difference was that when we started the first release of Endless Space 1, you were able during the battle to play some cards during the battle, and these cards could be countered or not by the other player. So it was a very simple system, and what I liked about that was you had a very simple action that could happen during the game. One of the biggest feedback we received then was, well, you know what? It's only 2 actions or 3 actions that are taken in the game. I'd rather do them, choose them before battle starts, and so I could autoplay the game because people playing a lot of games in a row. If they could skip the battle and just get the result, they would be happy. But they wanted to make sure the battle result they would get would be the best results they could get, not a simulation that would have killed a few ships they didn't need to kill to lose. So that's why after that we decided, okay, if everyone wants to be able to plan the battle ahead, so they can actually auto simulate it. We should bring all the strategy in front, and that's the biggest difference with Endless Space 2, where we want you to plan ahead everything. So and that actually we are looking into giving even more control to the player of things that can be controlled before the battle starts.
Yeah, one thing I like about the new combat system is I don't remember this from the first game. It's been a while since I played it, but I like how before combat starts you can choose kind of a strategy, like I'm going to go in or I'm going to do this, but you can tweak it a little bit as well, which I like, because I would much prefer actually tweaking it during the combat, but that's not how this works, so I'm not going to complain. But I like being able to say, hey guys, I want you to do this. Go.
No, I think in many ways you feel much more like like Napoleon before the Battle of Waterloo or Austerlitz, so setting your perfect battle plan and hope for the best, after, because once the battle starts, there's not much you can do from your seat.
Yeah.
And that we want you to be in that position, this kind of emperor position, not a captain, asking people to hide behind a wall, basically. So that's not really the feeling.
Yeah, I got to admit, I think that what might be what gets me about the combat system the most, there's something that kind of rubs me raw a little bit about it. I think it's that helplessness that once it's started, there's nothing I can do except hope for the best. I'm like, no, I want to do this, do that. No, damn it, no.
Yeah, but what I'd love to see in a game sometime is a game like this that doesn't have faster than light communication. So when you send a probe ship to another system, you don't know anything about what that probe ship saw until it comes back home, and then you see the system. But if it gets killed while it's there, you just never see it again. And then you wonder. So the same would be true with combat, right? You send a fleet, and if they come back, then you get the log of what happened. And if they don't, it just disappeared when it got there. But nobody's done that, and I can think of good reasons why.
It's probably not the easiest thing to implement in a game, I would think.
No, but a game like the Viceroy or something, where you're basically the emperor on the throne, and your point of view is from the home world, not
something much more
everywhere.
Higher level. Yeah, something much more higher level that might work. Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't work here, but it's just I just want somebody to be brave
you need to be a step or two above even where this is. You need to be even above this.
It is true, not having full control of everything is quite fun somehow. It's to have.
I disagree, but okay, fine.
No, yeah, it's awful, because you want them to listen to what you tell them. But it's true, to have for us, that's a bit what we had in mind with the population. We wanted to be able to have the population that would have their own will and desire that could sometimes be different from the one from the emperor, basically. And how will you deal with that? Will you whip them to do what you want them to do? Or will you sometimes you just have to do what they want to do, although it's not what you want to do? So it's not it's not a perfectly aligned, system where, you take an action and it happens, and sometimes you have to deal with your guys having all different desires, like your heroes. Maybe one day, they have their own, politics. And so anyway, I see what you mean. For me, time delay is difficult, I think, in many ways, sometimes because you forget, you don't know what happens, on something come back, you forgot about it. But to have not full control and I think it's interesting, like having different factions basically in an empire is fun.
Yeah, what I found was successful for me in the first game is I would have scout ships, because once you've explored a lot, it's like, well, my scout ships don't have a lot of use anymore. So what I would do is I would equip them defensively, and before I would encounter an enemy fleet, I would throw a scout ship in, and I would just play defensive cards, hoping that he would survive it. But just have him encounter the enemy fleet, and then I could look and see, like, okay, well, they're fighting mostly at medium range. So then whenever my fleet shows up, then I know what cards I'm going to play, because I've already scouted him with a scout ship. So yeah, and those things are so cheap, they're disposable. So I actually found a purpose for them, and it wouldn't have been that. Yeah, it wouldn't have been a thing to even need that, but because I had to declare what I was going to do before I got into the combat, it was very much to my advantage to know, what their tactics were going to be before the main fleet arrived.
Yeah, that was a common strategy being used on the Space One already. People like refitting all their ships after they saw, what you had equipped basically on your fleet. And then they attacked you with perfect counter, and using the perfect cards to counter you was butchery. That was
well, one thing about Endless Space One, I played quite a bit of multiplayer in it, and because the combat was not micromanagement like that, you could get through the combat pretty quickly.
Yeah,
and just what's going to happen happens. But if you want to watch it, you can, but it's optional. And that actually helps multiplayer out, because Brian and I have tried to play like Galactic Civilization 3 is a prime example, where there are so many turns in the game where it's just you hit end turn. You have a build queue that's like, in 100 turns you're going to get this, and you just have to sit there and keep beating the end turn button until something happens. But that has to go around the group of people that are playing every time. So And I've found that Endless Space 1 was a much better paced game for a multiplayer thing than playing some of the traditional things.
Because we are big fans of multiplayer for X with Mathieu, actually. So, and that's part of the DNA of Amplitude. We wanted to make 4X games that were fun to play multiplayer, basically. So we could play, a whole game, in one afternoon, on Sundays, or maybe like 2 afternoons, and so we did everything so that rhythm would go fast. You never would be like waiting, or we don't have to wait long. So hence the sim turns, hence all this activity and action from turn to turn. We don't want to have like 10 turns where you just press and turn. We don't want to have a battle that lasts 30 minutes of heavy decisions, with having one of the other player like just falling asleep on the other side, because you're just fighting a battle against pirates. So.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a question. Sorry, we have a question from the chat. Because right now the game has 5 factions in it?
4.
Four. Yeah, I'm sorry. The random button. I was like, in my mind, it's like, that's a 5th faction. No, it's a random button. We have a question as to 1, why you guys are so awesome, and 2, when's the next faction coming out for the early access version?
Okay, I will not answer the first one, but the second one, we want definitely to have something coming out within a month or so for the next faction, maybe a bit more. So basically, we have 4 more factions coming out, maybe a month and a half for the next one. 4 more factions coming out. Including the Fallen faction, which was designed by the community, which will be the last one to come out, because we had to start working late on it, so obviously. But then we have 3 others we haven't announced, and it will be, I can tell you, to give you a hint, you will have a mix of new factions and all the factions from Endless Space 1 coming back to the game.
Very, very nice. Now, I wanted to ask, because early access can really be a double-edged sword for a lot of developers. How are you find? Sorry, my mic cut out for a second. How are you finding the early access process going for Endless Space 2 so far?
Oh, it's good. It's great. But it's always scary as hell to go in early access, because early access, in many ways, it's your real release. It's more of a release than the final game, actually. So. Yes, it's a scary one. It's very scary as well, because not only it's your real release, but the game is still has bugs, it's totally unbalanced. So it's you never know how people will react to receiving an early access. And for us, a double stress that we had was we have new friends with Sega, and we were like taking them with us, in that adventure of the early access and shipping basically an unfinished game, and to have everyone play it. So we didn't know how they would react to this the first feedbacks of people saying they would disagree with a feedback decision with a bug they could see a crash happening, and they were very good at it. But and it was stressful as we didn't know how they would react. So anyway, it was it's always scary. It went very well. I'm very happy. I think we're at 81 or 82 user score on Steam, which is for early access. It's good. If you look at it from the mood is very good as well. So that's great. I'm happy that people like our choices and decisions. So it definitely helps us, motivates us to actually to do more. So now we are working with them. On ways to improve the battle, for example. It's something we discuss quite a bit here. We're discussing a lot with the community as well on how to give all these tools or improve all these tools with them. But whether this is going to be the population, adventures, quests, all that are great moments. For example, like a quest, in the 4X, it's a tricky one, because you wouldn't want someone to have played once and then don't want to play it again, so because it's a game you're going to play again and again and again and again, so it should be fun to play them again. So just that, having people in early access helping you and telling you this quest I don't like, this quest I don't like, because it's rarely because of the writing, it's mostly because of the goals of what they're gonna have to do. That could be sometimes a bit rigid, so we have to find ways to make them more fun, more interesting, and with a gameplay that you can renew. So in many ways. So anyway, it's pretty cool, and also we had what we call an improved list or priority list that we had when we shipped. And looking, trying to mix and match it to player expectations as well, to see, if we're on track, or if actually we had to raise the priority on some of the elements we wanted to do and later, and lower priority of some of the elements we wanted to do soon, but actually, except us, no one is asking for it. So it allows you to readapt and realign your priorities to the priority of your community, which is, I think, very important.
Yeah, because I've noticed if you guys have a great community, the games together thing, which I kind of wanted to talk about. Where did that idea come from, and how has that altered your development at all? Because I think it's kind of fascinating how much input you actually actively ask from your community. That doesn't always happen, and it can be really tricky.
Well, the good things, I think it's one thing is I think we influence each other's. We try to be very positive with our community and constructive. We want to give them visibility as well on what we do, so they're not surprised. Sometimes, when we know we'll not do something, we'll just simply tell them instead of trying to avoid, the topic. So it's we try to be transparent. They know that we are nuts about what we do. We also plan time with the community. So I think we have close to 10 designers working on Endless Space 2. So it's quite a lot for this kind of games. I think if you compare to many of our competitors, I would say you would have like 3 times less designers on such a game. It's just because we spend a lot of time interacting with the community. So at one point, if it's expected from you, you need to be able to work on less things, but then you spend more time, in the forums, interacting with the guys and try to understand, explain what you do. So guide your players in to give you feedback you can use, because a feedback like it sucks doesn't help, so you try to explain them, to basically give us better details of what stuff they don't like, why don't they like it, and then after a while they educate each others, it's so it's easier. And now we're a community which is pretty mature, that know how we use things, and they help us to try to give us feedback in a way we can make something out of it. So it's pretty cool. And then of course the deal is for us to be transparent. We don't have to have a hidden agenda for the community, except surprises. We have a few, basically the only surprises we have is more or less the factions. We try to give a little thing on hidden, so we have a surprise for them, and it's a reward and a gift for everyone. So but that's not the only thing. Everything else is pretty straightforward.
I'm also curious. Sorry. Quick question. I'm also curious how Sega fits into this whole community thing and everything, because
that's right where I was going too.
Yeah, because have they been more hands-on, or are they hands-off? You guys have already been successful. You do you, and we're just here if you need us. How has that relationship been? Because that was a surprise for a lot of people when you guys got acquired by Sega.
Okay, so for the Sega topic. Actually, what you said more or less at the end was perfectly it. It's how that is. They don't really do early access. They, of course, Games Together, we are the only ones doing that. So obviously, if they were interested in us, I want to think this is also because of what we do with the Games Together. And the way they are so far, they're just exactly as you said. Whatever we can do, you proved you can do amazing 4Xs. We love that. We love these games. It's great in our portfolio. We basically have a perfect fit. In terms of philosophy, in terms of games we do. So basically, how can we help you? And we do need a lot of help. We grew very fast. We are very young. We have a lot of things we're not good at. We need help. We are game developers, and if we want to keep making good games, we need to have people to help us to more or less take care of the business side of things, so we can just make games and not have to think, oh God, how am I going to sell this game? And because that's not what we're good at. Although if we come back to your earlier question, which was how did the idea of the Games Together come? The idea of the Games Together was we believe, because we're already quite experienced in making games, that we could make a good game. But we believed that we were most likely not to be able to sell it, that most people would never know that we did a good game. The idea with the Games Together was to try to create a bond with our community, and so people will get very engaged in the game and talk a lot about the game and bring their friends in. And for that, we decided we thought about what could engage our players and basically our future players, and we decided by basically more or less being transparent, by just opening ourselves to them and say, okay, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is what we do not, this is what we'll do tomorrow, And if you want us to do something different tomorrow, well, come and help us do it, and explain what else or how else we could do it, and if we like it, we'll implement it in the game and show it to you, basically. So it's this whole idea of we believed as players, that working in live in front of some of your players was something very motivating for the players, basically. So that's what we wanted to see as players, and that's how we decided to develop that way. But it was a way to attract people to our community, to our games, and also it was a way for us to learn to make games we didn't know how to make. We knew how to make games, but not 4Xs. We never did a 4X before. And by attracting some of the most experienced 4X players around, it was helping us, giving us a lot of possibility, basically, to have all that feedback very, very early on. And basically, from the moment we would work on the game design documents and not from the moment where the game is finished, basically. And that's a big difference. And that's why we couldn't work otherwise nowadays.
Now
there was a lot of concern in the community, at the surprise Sega announcement, and people were just expressing, boy, I hope the relationship with Sega doesn't change them or whatever. So we're happy to see that there's some separation and you guys leverage each other's strengths. But I have the temptation, though, that if I were you, I would have the artist draw up an alien race that's blue hedgehogs, and just be like, hey, here's a teaser. Just do like a silhouette that looks like Sonic the Hedgehog, and be like, this is the new race that's coming. It's a mystery, and just watch people lose their minds.
Yes. I'm fairly sure that we would get have a riot within the building very, very quickly. So yes, we didn't take the chance to do that. That's for sure.
It'd be a good April Fool's thing, or announce Endless Western. You can just say, hey, our new game, it's a Western. And also people would...
Yeah.
Now, you said...
Yes? Sorry?
No, you said you'd never worked on a 4X game before yet. One thing I loved about the original game, and especially the new one, is the interface. The UI is probably one of my favorite things about these games, because I'm kind of a UI nut. So, though you say you never worked on one before, how did your previous experiences help you build such a clean and usable user interface?
So with that, we basically, during our previous lives, we worked with some amazing UI designers, basically, and that helped us on previous games that we worked on. To strategy games, not 4X, but strategy games, and very good job with that. So that's also what we realized, when we were playing many of the 4Xs we loved, we were most of the time fighting against the interface. And it's true that, working on AAA interface is something which is very important. You have big teams working on the interface to try to actually minimize, the time people would spend on the interface. But actually, what we want is people to play the game and not, of course, fight, the interface. So that's basically why we were very, very used to that, and we knew that the interface would be one of our biggest fights, because 4X is an interface game. It's very interface heavy. So
yeah.
So anyway,
I noticed the design choice in here, because it was sort of material before, but you guys have thoroughly embraced the material design thing. I think you actually were early adopters of that, because it wasn't super popular back whenever Endless One came out, and even that game kind of leaned into the material style of flat interface.
Yes. Yeah, it's also to give it like it's true, like when you look at many strategy games, not necessarily 4X interfaces, they tend to be very old school, so anyway, it was or fantasy stuff, you had to have a stone texture on it. So yeah, we would definitely not wanted to do that. We wanted to be more Apple, or more like a web design, very like sleek, very modern, and it should feel cool to play a 4X game. You shouldn't feel like nerdish and shouldn't have to hide, in your bedroom to play 4X, basically.
So what is the roadmap for the rest of the early access period for Endless Space 2? Like you said, there's another faction coming out within maybe a month, but what else is coming up going forward that's leading you to the final release?
Well, we have like marketplace, we have mercenaries, we have bigger, better weapons, coming out, for to be like world destroyers. We have diplomacy, advanced diplomacy. Right now we have nearly nothing in terms of diplomacy. And part of 4X, it's all about, making friends as much as, you will make enemies. So it's definitely part of that. We'll have, of course, the AI using the diplomacy and giving you, the tools to be able to better understand what the AI thinks of you, of the surrounding. Pressure system to help you like bully people into conceding a defeat without even shooting a single bullet. We have I don't know, so many things coming up. It's mostly what you'll see will be, except on top of these elements I just said, a lot of stuff will help to bring more variety in the mid game to end game, and that's why at first we wanted to limit the number of turns you had in the early access, because now what we have for the mid game to end game is is nothing. It's just basic, and right now we're still missing 2 ages of technologies as well, so it's definitely a lot of content. So there's a lot of content coming in.
That's awesome, because a lot of people want as much as you can cram into a 4X.
Yeah.
So
I don't think they will be disappointed.
Yeah, no, it doesn't sound disappointing. One thing I wanted to ask about is the political system. I don't remember if the political system in the first game was as fleshed out as this one seems to be. Like, you have parties within each system and each planet that you can deal with separately, which is fascinating. So. Is that a new thing? And if so, like how far along is that, and how is that going to impact gameplay?
So it's so right now what you have is the modest base works. We'll keep expanding on that. The idea was to be able to have people having more or less feelings, to be able to react to their surroundings. So basically there could be a game between your people and yourself. You're the emperor, you have a will and they have their own will, and how will you make them follow you in what you want? How will you decide to follow them in what they want? So to create this whole game, and at the same time, you will try to influence them. They will try to influence you. It's a game basically to be just the emperor of you people without even having to deal with any other empires. You could play the game with no other empires around. It should be fun basically. So it's that's the whole idea, at first. And basically now what we're working on is to having clearly showing you the player clearly how. Things will impact, events will impact their mood, their beliefs, and how they will interact back to you. What will happen, when they will refuse to follow you. So that's all these kind of things that we want to expand on.
And I like how, like, if you build different types of ships, it can help different types of different governments, different parts of your government, which I like. I like how you can kind of influence it directly, but it can still like change how the game plays for you. I like
and
that.
Every single civilization in the game will react differently. Cravers obviously will not react the same way to war and peace than Lumeris, for example, who will a citizen of the Lumeris, who will, or a Lumeris population, because you could even be a Cravers with Lumeris citizens, right? So because there's a whole migration system where people can migrate to other empires. So anyway, and basically very quickly you will have an empire which is multicultural, and all these people will have different filters to look at their surroundings. So that will also add a whole different layer in terms of complexity and having to deal with that.
Yeah, that sounds like an area of gameplay that isn't really looked at much in terms of
No.
like there's not much internal politics. Usually, a lot of 4X games are like everyone's this one party and it's great. So it is kind of nice to see potential internal strife, not just from like angry citizens rising up as a mob, but also other political parties as well. I'm really excited about that one.
That's the thing that, in my first game that I played of it, right? I played the Sophons, and the homeworld, there's 2 races on the homeworld already, right? Turn 1. And there's, different political parties, and one has a little more influence than the other. So clearly the more influential one is in power. But depending on what technology advancements I go for, I can see that, okay, I'm going to empower one party or the other. So I might flip my government just by what technologies I chase.
Yeah, and basically by being able to switch governments, you can also give new powers to your empire. Obviously, to go to war, the militaristic party could be much more interesting. Although, the industrial party could help you build a better fleet. Or a bigger fleet. So all these choices you will have to make, and how will you manage to have your population switch, allegiance. So
well, the thing that I find nice about the way that you guys are doing it is I don't just arbitrarily, like in Civilization, I decide, oh yeah, I'm looking at the numbers and it would be better if I was a democracy right now. But I just arbitrarily flip to that. And it doesn't matter how I actually play the game. So I could be a democracy that is really totalitarian in behavior, right? And then looking at the way that you guys do it, I actually have to, because to get the government in power, I have to actually pursue the technologies and systems that are going to give them power. So that means I'm going to be playing in that mindset. Not just playing one way and having a government that's another way.
Yeah, totally. That's the goal.
Yeah.
So I guess my other question that I've got is about the DLC stuff, because we've recently had Paradox bring a 4X game out. Paradox games, the contrast between you guys, like Endless Space 1, there was no DLC, right? Or maybe there was one.
There was.
Okay.
There was one expansion, I think.
Okay, yeah, I remember that now because
But we had like 12 free ones, I think.
Right, yeah, but I mean, there was the one pay one. Was it Distump thing? Oh, I can't remember what it was called. It began with a D, right?
Disharmony.
Yes, Disharmony.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Disharmony.
I kept wanting to say Dishonored. I'm like, no, that's a completely different thing.
Yeah, well, because they started selling it as like the complete, the gold package or whatever, and that's whenever I bought it for my wife, that was the one that I got. So I didn't, so I'd kind of forgotten that there even was a DLC on the thing. But then when Paradox brings a game out, it feels unfinished, right? It's just like, oh well, we don't have a political system at all. And about 5 DLCs down the road, we'll put that in, right? But whenever you look at Paradox stuff, it's just their business model. Nothing against them, but it's a thing where you're best to just wait a year or two, and then the game will be actually what you're expecting. Or if you want to be an early adopter, and do that. But you look at like Crusader Kings, and they got like 40 different DLCs and such. And so with Endless Legend, you guys have been doing DLCs a lot more frequently, and they're paid. But they actually, Endless Legend felt like a complete game on day one. Mm-hmm. But then you add a new system, so it's like the new one, Tempest, I think it is. It's coming out. It adds a lot of seafaring things, and then you had one that added like the whole the spy system, the intelligence and that. But it's like it was a complete game, and then you guys bolt on even more features that expands it out. So I'm wondering what's the plan with this? And I know it's early access; you don't even have this game done yet. So, but I'm just wondering like the roadmap of what the ambitions are.
So I think there are quite a few different things there. One about I think DLC philosophy. I think there's one about that, and actually we changed actually. At first, when we started Amplitude, we believed that DLC was a bad word, and within there doing it, doing DLCs. Well after shipping in the space, a lot of people will say, "Oh, I want more content, So we are trying to add, but for free, But after a while, you just run out of money because we started working on another game, right? So it was okay. How do we do that? So say, okay, you know what, guys, we'll make you just this one, free DLC, not free, pay DLC. We ship it, and as soon as we shipped it, people were 2 days after, okay, we want more, but it was too late, we're just, guys, we don't have more resources, we can't do more, and that's where we realized actually DLC is not necessarily a bad thing. Actually, it can be a very good thing. Actually, it allows the game to live for a very long time, and that's actually where I switch philosophy. As a player, before everything, I prefer to have paid DLC on the game I love, and that allows me that game to evolve for a long time and stay alive for a long time. And I love sometimes, to put a game, in the drawer for 6 months and come back in 6 months and download all the new extra DLCs, paid or free, whatever, and play the game. And then I feel like I'm rediscovering this game I love again and again, and then I can play for 2 more weeks and put it back in the drawer and just dream to discover it again. So for me, I prefer to have paid DLC on the games I love, that allow me to basically keep playing and on that game rather than just drop it and never go back to it. So I think it could be a good thing. Then I agree with you. There are 2 things that could make it, for me, that are bad in terms of DLC. One, I agree with you, is when you just withhold, content you could have done, to put it in the DLC, content you could have done because maybe it wasn't that hard to do, or because maybe actually it would have fit much better for the game to feel complete at release. So I agree, although it could always be subject to discussion whether it was needed or not needed. Then the next one is value for the money. And sometimes when you look at DLC, you could feel like it's a ripoff, just looking at what content you get and how much you have to pay for it. And that is not how you want people to react to your DLC. You don't want people to look at them and say, "Oh, you're ripping me off."
Well, and since you guys are multiplayer focused in the office there, how does it work if I have the DLC and you don't? Because then the patch is going to have to download the DLC to you anyway, so that you're compatible with me. But do I get to witness the AI using things that I can't because I didn't unlock it with the DLC?
No. The way it works on Legends, I don't know if you've seen that, but if you're the host, you have all the DLCs. All the clients will have the DLCs activated for them.
Oh, see, that's really nice.
So
that's most generous, I would say.
Yeah, it's a great tease as well. For us, I think it's the best way to try to have people discover basically what the DLC adds. So now they could play with their friends. Oh, wow, that's so cool! I can do that. Okay, that's part of DLC. Okay, cool. Let's buy it. Or I can only play with my friends. And that's it. But I think that would have been really bad to limit everyone to the minimum. So if one guy has no DLC, then no one has access to the DLC. I think I prefer to do the other way around, basically.
Okay. Yeah, because I've seen some games where if you don't have the DLC, the AI will still have it, and they'll do things, and it's like, wait, I can't do that, and it's like, well, and maybe even the option is there, like, oh, I want to build this. Oh, well, here, let me take you to the store. It's like, damn it.
No, it feels like free to play, basically. So. No, it's not our philosophy, and anyway, you know what? It's even easier for us to do that way. I mean, everything is better that way. It's easier to implement. It feels like nice for as players. I think it's great to tease and to show and demo the content. I think it's definitely the best way to go.
Yeah, it's like this ridiculous notion that you actually respect your customers.
Ridiculous, totally.
That sounds super ridiculous. So we got to start wrapping this up because I actually have to run to work. But so when when is the plan to get out of early access for this one?
We don't have a specific date yet. Usually, what we try to hold is 4 to 6 months. What we realized in the past is if you go beyond 6 months, people start to get bored. They want to always see stuff happening often, so they are active, and then they stay involved in the game. After a while, they move on. So you need to finish the game within 6 months. So, and if it's less than 4 months, we don't have time to implement anything, big enough, so it's you need enough time to work, and it can't be too long so people stay engaged. So 4 to 6 months is perfect, and we're doing our best to stick to that.
That sounds like a really healthy early access period. Not too long, not too short. You know, they're very nice. So yeah, Jim, any other questions before we wrap up?
No, I'm pretty satisfied, and I like the way that they're doing the early access, where they've brought the races in, slowly, and that way they get a chance to balance the baseline races before then they start adding more funky stuff in. So that just makes sense, which is scary because very few people do things that make sense in this industry. It's like balance stuff, right? Let's throw like 30 races in there and then try to balance that. And oh gosh,
we need time. You need time.
I'd be fine if there wasn't any balance.
Yeah. Although on our side, there's a weird decision that we took a long time ago, which was to accept unbalance. If we had to, at one point, we had to choose between aiming at perfect balance, it's strategy, and in chess, if you didn't have perfect balance, some people would kind of be mad. So balance is important, but at the same time, for us, we love the asymmetry of the factions. We love to be able to play in different way than another player, because my faction is so different from his. To have different point of views on the game according to who you play, and
I guess you need very, very different victory conditions for the factions, not only to make people actually play in the mindset of that faction, but just because if it's unbalanced in a certain way, well, maybe these guys have to actually do something very different than you. So therefore their advantages keep it even for them, because they're going to have a harder time winning in their way.
But then it's insane to balance, and that's why we don't want to promise basically a perfect balance at release, but we want to promise fun at release and very different factions at release. Yet after a while, having with all your 8 factions together, maybe a few ones maybe we'll add later, it will give us time after to balance things out, and with time it's balance definitely counts. But already with early access, we take a head start. If we had to release the game with no early access, that would totally for sure would have a very funky balance. Too funky.
Is there a particular race that you would suggest for a new player that hasn't played any of these games? Like, just grab the Sophons or whoever.
Yeah, in Final Space 2 and Endless Space. Well, Final Space 2, I would go for the Sophons, at least on the early access. You will have another one coming soon that will be fairly easy to play as well. So that one maybe will be the best then. So definitely the one I would go for Endless Legends. Playing all of. I don't know if we have any difficult ones really. So for me, any of them should be pretty good. The Volters are pretty easy to play, I would say. I would go. It's easy. It's an easy one. It's human, so it's easy to identify yourself to. The gameplay is pretty straightforward. I would go for it.
That's
like the
awesome.
faction we added in the last DLC definitely is very difficult and weird. It's awesome, but I would say it's not the first one I would play.
So my final question is about Endless Legend. You just released the Tempest DLC, which I'm going to get very soon because I love Endless Legend a lot. But what else? What else do you have planned coming up for that game? And how many people do you still have working on it?
We have reduced the team. We still have some support, like for the post-release, stuff we discovered, because we had a pretty long. It was a closed beta actually we had on Tempest, but we didn't have early access. It's a DLC. So we already tackled a lot of issues before, but we're still waiting to see if there's some stuff that need fixing or improving. So we still have a few guys. But right now, we don't have any further plans for Endless Legends. So we have a lot of things on our plate at the moment. So that's why, again, I can't say we will not do anything else, but for now, it's definitely not planned.
Well, there's already so much there. There's you've already done so much with it. I mean, I don't think anyone complained about, I don't have enough to do in Endless Legend. I don't think anyone can complain about that at this point, because it's so
it's rich. It's very rich.
Massive, and I really can't wait to try Tempest with its new naval focus. I'm very excited about that.
It's very cool. Yesterday when I looked at it, the user score was at 100% on Steam. I couldn't believe it. I don't think we ever had that. It was only 58 people voting, but still, it was pretty cool.
That's pretty cool, especially for a DLC for a game that's been out a while. That ain't nothing to sneeze at all.
No, very, very, very happy. Very good feedback we get from the community on it.
So, I guess we're going to wrap this up. Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
Just statement. The other thing that I think is really cool in this is that you guys have incorporated the quest systems. So you're playing, and then it gives you a little side objective, like, go do this, and then you'll get whatever reward out of that, which I think is pretty novel in that, because you don't see a lot of games that mix like RPG stuff into a 4X.
No.
Is that the kitten? Jim, is that the kitten? Am I hearing the kitten? I'm sorry. I think I just heard a kitten.
Yes, that is the kitten.
Oh yeah, guys, Jim got a kitten. And it's the cutest. I'm sorry, Roman. Jim got a kitten, and it's the cutest thing. Oh my God, Jim, you got to post pictures and stuff on like.
Yeah, did you see the video?
I did see the video. Oh my God. So cute. Sorry. I love cats. I love animals. Sorry. Guys, go to the Space Game Junkie group. Jim will be posting pictures, right, Jim? Of the kitten?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It'll happen.
The new Kilrathi on our team.
I'll take a picture of the cat in front of Endless Legend 2 or Endless Space 2.
Okay.
See, do you guys ever get your game names confused? It's Endless something, and you really at this point you could just say like endless auto mechanics, or just put any word behind endless, and you got a new game. So
to make it simple, we say Legend, Space, Space 2, Dungeon.
That makes sense.
We know what we're thinking about, so we can just say one word. That's enough.
All right, so folks, to wrap up, just a couple of programming notes. This Thursday, we are actually going to play Space Beast Terrafright, but if you want to play, you have to be there on time. Don't be late like you were last week, and then we didn't end up playing.
So this isn't really going to devolve into Shadow Warrior 2 again,
No, this time we hope to actually play Space Beast Terrafright. And next week on the show, we're welcoming back, I think, fifth-time guest, the developer of Void Destroyer 2, our good friend Paul. Paul number 1.
Oh, not that
There's a Paul
guy
number
again.
2. I can't remember his last name, but it's the second Paul we've had on the show.
Yep, Paul Z. But is he getting frequent flyer miles or something? Because it's between him and the other Paul that have been the most frequent people on here.
I know,
we must like them or something.
We do. They're good people. But Romain, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to talk to us about Endless Space 2. There's no way we had time in the day to get to everything we wanted to talk about, but I think we covered quite a bit.
This podcast was almost endless.
Oh, Jesus. So, folks, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to check out Endless Space 2. It is on Steam Early Access right now. Again, early access, so don't go in thinking it's a full game. There's still a lot that needs to be added over the next several months. But, thank you so much for listening and watching, and we will see you next week. Have a good one.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.